today. We are holding page 54a, and we learned yesterday this Mishnah and the Gemara about the um, the different blowings that were blown on the trumpets on a regular daily basis, on a for the special days. There was days of Musaf, there's Erev Shabbos, and then there's the water libation ceremony on Sukkot. And the Mishnah went through all the different blowings. The minimum is 21, maximum is 48, and the Mishnah went through all the different moments when you would do these different blowings. And the Gemara mentioned that there's different ways of calculating these blowings, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, you actually every 3 blows you calculate it as 1, because really a tekiah, teruah, tekiah are really one. It's not just one set, but it's really one blow. It's one mitzvah, I should say. It's really one entity. And because it's one entity, therefore, Reb Yehuda has a different calculation of it. And it comes out, instead of saying that we blow 21 blasts, he calls it 7 blasts on a regular day. And on Erev Shabbos, that's on Sukkot, when we called it 48 blasts, he calls it 16 blasts, because if you multiply 16 times 3, you get 48. So he followed this other way of looking at the mitzvah of blowing tekiah, teruah, tekiah, as every tekiah, teruah, tekiah is really it's one entity. Now, we spoke a little about it, how we do blow a tekiah, teruah, tekiah. We blow these type of blasts on Rosh Hashanah, and we're supposed to blow 3 of these blasts every Rosh Hashanah. Now, if you blow 3 blasts of tekiah, teruah, tekiah, tekiah means a solid blast. Teruah means some type of a broken up blast, which is a whole debate what it means. It could mean a very small blast. It could mean a medium-sized blast, or it could mean a combination of both. So it comes out that it's 3 different options for what a teruah blast is, but it's definitely not solid. So you got a solid blast, then you got this teruah, which is questionable, and then at the end of every set, you have a solid blast. So you start solid, you end solid, you have some type of a broken blast in the middle called a teruah. And because of this dilemma of what teruah is, that's why on Rosh Hashanah, we end up blowing a lot more blasts than you think. You really should fulfill the mitzvah with 9 blasts and you're all done. Instead, we blow 30, and then we even blow afterwards other blasts. But the concept of blowing 30 is based on the fact that we're not sure what the middle blasts really are supposed to be, because the Torah doesn't spell out how do you blow a teruah. It leaves it vague. The Gemara has 3 different options what it could be. Now, the Gemara here mentions that Rabbi Yehuda holds it's all one blast. And then we had a statement in the Gemara. Actually, before the Gemara brings the statement of Rav Kahana, I should mention the Gemara goes through the different reasons. What's the source? Why would you call all of these blasts 1, or why would you call it 3 blasts? And the Gemara goes through a little back and forth, a dialogue of, what's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? What's the reason of the rabbis? What do the rabbis do with that? What do the Rabbi, you use this pasuk to teach you this, and how do the rabbis understand it their way? And so the Gemara goes, really, it's back and forth. In Aramaic, it's called the shakel v'tarya. It takes and it tears apart. It sort of there's a discussion of how they're sort of fighting over how to figure this out. And so the Gemara says Reb Yehuda, and the truth of the matter is, the commentaries also, um, the later commentaries in the Gemara also debate, because there seems to be a question of the exact wording here. That's why you see some parentheses in the Gemara, and the commentaries are debating which, are all of those words meant to be there, or is maybe some of them not really part of the Gemara. But basically, what we find is three verses, and this is what it seems to boil down to. There's a verse that says uskatem trua. There's a verse that says trua yisku. Let me just do it in the order the Gemara says. The Gemara starts off with uskatem trua, and then it says trua yisku, and then it says shanus. Uskatem trua shanus. And in that pasuk of uskatem trua shanus, it is the pasuk that it says trua yisku. Anyway, bottom line is that according to Reb Yehuda, it mentions trua and tekiah in the same breath in the Torah. In other words, in the same wording, it interchanges tekiah, trua. One of them is a verb, and one of them is the object of the verb. And seemingly there should be two separate things, because one of them means a solid blow and one of them means a broken blow. But yet the Torah puts them and intermingles them and interchanges, and seems to use them both as as it wishes, without specifically saying, keeping to the format that it should. Terua yisra'u, it should be, or uskatem tekiah would be more grammar, more appropriate. But instead, it mixes the two up, and so Reb Yehuda says, you know why? Because really, it's one thing. A tekiah, a terua, and a tekiah are really one. That's what Reb Yehuda says, and it's achasi. It's one thing. It's one entity. The rabbis say no; they're each one their own entity, and so the rabbis say they see that because it says, you're right, it does say uskatem trua and trua yisku, what Reb Yehuda is using as his source. The rabbis say, yeah, but that's not a source that it's one entity. That just means that uskatem trua, blow a tekiah before the trua. And trua yisku means after the terua, blow a tekiah. So it switches around the wording from the solid blast to the broken blasts, because it wants you to have a solid blast first, a broken blast in the middle, and a solid blast at the end. And that's why it switches off to tell you you have to do all three. Not that they're one entity, but that there has to be an introduction and an end and a middle. And that's the reason for the wording like that. So the Gemara says in Reb Yehuda, what does he do? How does he know about the one before and the one after? So the Gemara answers that basically it says shanus. Of course, that's the question in the commentaries. What exactly are you learning from the shanus? So the way it's explained, or one of the ways it's explained, is you have shanus to teach you that one of the blowings, that there needs to be a solid, one of those solids is learned from shanus. Another one of the solids, that there has to be a solid before and a solid after, is from one of the other two psukim. And one of the other two psukim teaches you that they're all equal. They're all one. It's all one entity. So
Rabbi,
Yeah.
can you just remind me again, what does this have to do with Sukkah? In case somebody asks me.
In case someone asks you. Uh-huh. So when they do the water libation, we blow the trumpets, and we're dealing with those blows in addition to the regular blows. There was additional blows, and all of these blows seem to have this method, this a style of solid, broken solid. And so we're dealing with and we're also dealing with interruptions between these blows as well. That's also like connected here, because if it's all supposed to be one entity, then you can't really interrupt. If they could be different entities, that would be a reason you could maybe interrupt, different rules about interruption. So anyway, it's connected to Sukkah because of the we're dealing with the Simchas Beis HaShoeva and the water libation ceremony, and what it was one of the big things that was added during the ceremony is the blowings of the trumpet. Regular day had 21 blows, and even on special days, 30 blows, 36. Sukkot topped them all, 48. At least if it was Erev Shabbos on Sukkot. So it would be 48. That was like 12 more than the most we ever have. And so that's what we're explaining. This chapter is really about the Chalil and blowing the water libation ceremony, So that's what so this is very apropos for this chapter. Okay.
Thank you.
So the Gemara learns from these three verses that Rabbi Yehuda uses one to tell you that they're all one entity. He uses one verse to tell you that there has to be a solid blow before, and then he has another verse, the Shenus, that you have to have a solid blow afterwards. What was the Uskatem Terua Shenus? That you would have a solid blow also after. So you have a solid blow before. In other words, if you want to know specifically which verse is which, so uskatem trua would be a tekiah before, and tekiah before, and then Shenes would be a tekiah afterwards, and Trua Yisku would be that they're all considered one. And so that would be Reb Yehuda's teaching. Now the Gemara then the Gemara said, the Gemara then went further and said that the rabbis have approved that it can't be all considered one. Tekiah, Terua, Tekiah, that can't be one, because we find when it talks about the mitzvah of blowing the trumpets in the Torah, so it mentions there that sometimes you would blow the trumpets without doing a trua. It mentions the tekiah alone. In fact, there are two scenarios where you do the tekiah alone. One is when you're gathering the entire congregation, and the other time is when you're gathering the leaders, the nasiim. And it there mentions that you only do the trumpets of a solid. You only do one of those cases. You do both trumpets, like when you're gathering all of Klal Yisrael, all the Jewish people, or when you're gathering the leaders, you do one trumpet. But they do not do in neither of those cases do you do the trua, the broken blasts. So you see that there's an entity of solid blasts without a broken blast. It's an entity in its own right. It's not all one. There's an entity of a solid blast without a broken. So Yehuda says, yeah, there is such a thing. That's just a sign to gather the Moshe wants to speak to the Jewish people. That's not an actual mitzvah of doing this blowing trumpets. That's a symbol, a simna bialma, just a sign that Moshe wants to speak to them. The rabbis say, yeah, It's a sign Moshe wants to speak to them, and Hashem made it into a mitzvah. You're supposed to do it in this way, that it's supposed to be gathering. It's supposed to be you're supposed to use the trumpets to gather them, and you don't blow the trua. And so that shows that if it was one entity, you can't do half. You can't do just a tekiah without a trua. According to Reb Yehuda, it's one entity. You would need to do both. It must be that each one is their own entity, and that's the rabbi's understanding. Reb Yehuda understands that it seems to be just a simna bialma. It's just a way of gathering them. It's not a mitzvah. And that's an interesting question. Exactly what does he mean that it's not a mitzvah? I mean, it's in the Torah. And now it is interesting that they would blow the trumpets when they established the fast day. And the question was that connected? Is that possibly connected to the mitzvah of the blowing of the trumpets that they did in the desert when they gathered the Jewish people? So interestingly enough, the Rambam seems to put it together with the laws of a war, not the laws of gathering the people that Moshe wants to speak to them. They have to do tshuva and so on. That, in other words, the way the Rambam understands, it's not really connected to this. It's really connected more to gathering, to the rules of a war, that they would blow the trumpets. But there are sources that it could be that it's connected to that the tinus, when they would blow the trumpets on a fast day, that's connected to the gathering of the people that was done in the desert. Anyway, bottom line is that the Gemara now explained both Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis, how they learn it out from verses, and then the Gemara says it seems that we have a source. The Gemara says we have a statement of Rav Kahana, and the Gemara says it sounds like he's going like Reb Yehuda, because Rav Kahana says you can't interrupt. You do the tekiah and the teruah, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt. Why not? You know why? It's one entity. Reb Yehuda holds it as one entity. You can't interrupt. Now, what would the rabbis say? I guess you could interrupt, right? It's not one entity. If to do tekiah, trua tekiah, you have to blow these different blasts. It's not one entity. Rabbi Yehuda holds it one entity. Fine, you can't interrupt. The rabbis hold that they're separate entities. So seemingly, maybe you could interrupt. But the Gemara says, no, maybe the rabbis also hold you're not supposed to interrupt. There's different types of interruptions. There's big interruptions and there's small interruptions. For example, in halacha, we find interruptions where you have the ability to finish the entire prayer when you interrupt. If you have that, in other words, you have enough time to finish the entire prayer during that interruption, that's called an interruption. So if you interrupt with that amount of time, that ruins the whole prayer because you interrupted. That's called a real interruption. If you interrupted with smaller than that, not a problem. And so there's an opinion of Rebbe Avahu with regarding to interrupting shaha k'dei ligmar es kula. Rebbe Avahu has the opinion in certain halachas that if you interrupt the amount of time that you could have finished the whole thing, then that's called an interruption. Rabbi Yochanan argues with him, and Rabbi Yochanan says, "Nah, there's no problem with taking a little break. You're doing the mitzvah. You took a break and you're doing the mitzvah." So Rabbi Yochanan and Rebbe Avahu seem to have this argument, this debate about making interruptions. And one of the cases would be blowing shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Practically, what would happen if you blew the blows of Rosh Hashanah every hour? You blow 1 hour, you blow one blow the first hour of the day. You wake up at 6:30, you do your first blow. Tekiah, you blow your first blow, whatever, sunrise. Then you wait an hour and you blow a second blow. Teruah, or shvarim teruah, and you do your second blow in the second hour of the day. And then the third hour of the day, you do another tekiah, and you blow the tekiah, and you do like that throughout the day. Would you be yaitza or not? So according to Rabbi Avahu, you're not fulfilling the mitzvah. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, our Gemara brings Rabbi Yochanan's view. Rabbi Yochanan holds you blow the 9 blasts every hour. Each hour you blew 1. You get 9 blasts, which is the official rule of how many blasts you really need. The bottom line, the lowest amount that you would need would be 9 blasts. So that would be sufficient. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, you did an interruption of an hour in between each of those blasts, you fulfilled the mitzvah. Now the Gemara says, maybe.
And what are the 9? The 9 blasts are tekiah, shvarim, teruah, tekiah?
Well, that's a good question. If you want to just follow the Torah's 9 blasts, it would be tekiah, teruah, tekiah. We don't know what teruah means.
That's still only
tekiah,
11.
Teruah,
But that's 11.
no, tekiah, teruah, tekiah is 3, and 3 of those. Tekiah, teruah, tekiah, tekiah, teruah, tekiah, tekiah, teruah, tekiah. It's 9. Now, we don't know what teruah means. We don't know what teruah means, but teruah, whatever it means.
Understood, right.
You fulfilled
You cover
the
it 3 different ways, just with the shvarim, just with the teruah, and with shvarim teruah.
Well, that's the way we do it.
That's what we do, right, to cover every possibility.
Right. Now the thing is like this. There's a big argument in the Rishonim fulfilling the mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah that the Gemara mentions that we do all of them. We cover ourselves. Does that mean we're doing all of them more as like a minhag? But really the halacha follows each option is kosher on its own? Or do we follow all of them because we want to fulfill the mitzvah definitely? Meaning, would you fulfill the mitzvah if you just blew 1 set? Tekiah, let's say you blew tekiah, shvarim, teruah, tekiah, tekiah, shvarim, tekiah, tekiah, teruah, tekiah. You blew 1 of each, 1 set of each. So you did 3, what you would call it, 3 sets, but not 3 sets of 3, 3 sets of 1. Now, are they mutually exclusive, or do they each fulfill a mitzvah? Each one rabbi felt one way, one rabbi felt another way, one rabbi felt another way. Just ideally, that would be the best, that was more apropos, but really all 3 are kosher. So could you fulfill the mitzvah if you just did a set of each of those? Because each of those are options that are kosher. And we happen to do all 30, but really you could get away with blowing, 1 set of each of those. And the other way is, no, you need to fulfill the mitzvah properly. And we don't know what teruah means. It might mean this, or it might not mean this. It might only mean that, or it might not mean that. It might only mean the 3rd option. And therefore you need to blow 30. And this becomes very practical if you ever blow shofar in a nursing home, because you're going from one room to the next room, to a 3rd room, to a 10th room, and then you are out of breath. And if you could be lenient, it makes it a lot easier. So there's 2 opinions, and the Piskei Teshuvos gives a leniency. If you're stuck, you could get away with just blowing, because there is such a view. There is such a view in the Rishonim. The Rambam holds you need to blow all 30. But the other view, and I forget the source of the other view, holds that each one is kosher. Each option is kosher. And so therefore, if you're really stuck, you could get away with blowing 10 blasts. In other words, tekiah, shvarim, teruah, tekiah, tekiah, shvarim, tekiah, tekiah, teruah, tekiah. You blow 1 set of each, and then you've fulfilled the mitzvah, at least according to those Rishonim, and according to that understanding, so that it's not mutually exclusive, that the options are there. Anyway, that's regarding blowing shofar on Rosh Hashanah, if you're in a tough situation where you can't blow all the blasts, 30 blasts in every single place where you're going, you could get away with blowing less and you'll fulfill the mitzvah. Jeffrey, did you want to say something?
Yes. The other question, of course, is whether you should say a bracha in each place, because we consider it to be a mitzvah, so we have a bracha. And who says the bracha when you go around to all the people in the nursing home? If they're well enough, can they say the bracha? And you just blow for them. So it's very interesting. We had a lot of experiences when we were younger, and we would take young fellows with us from the Boy Scouts, Coast Boy Scouts, and so we had more than one who could blow to make it easier. And also we tried to gather the older people together, so as many as could be brought together. And our rabbi would say to us also, sing with them, like sing a Don Olam, things like people can't talk to you, we'll sing a Don Olam, etc., because they remembered it from so long ago. So it's a very, very interesting experience. I'm glad you brought it out.
Thank you. Yeah, so there are some shilas about the bracha. It's also the question you really have is you don't know the level of cognizance of the patient. So for you to say the bracha and you're not sure of their cognizance, that also is problematic. So the easiest way around it is that you let them say the bracha if they're able to, and if not, you just have them in mind that that they're fulfilling the mitzvah even without the bracha, because the brachas are not ma'akiv. If they miss the bracha, it's still fulfilling the mitzvah. But if you have them say the bracha, then you're all set. Especially with women, you can't say the bracha because a woman is not 100% mechuyev in hearing the shofar. Okay, so the story here was that Rav Kahana had said a statement: you can't interrupt, and you have to do the tekiah, teruah. You have to do them shortly. They're one after another. So the Gemara says maybe that fits with the rabbi's view, and the rabbis hold that you can't interrupt kedei ligmar es kula. Maybe you can't interrupt the amount of time that you would finish all the blows, but in other words, you have up to that threshold. The threshold is the maximum interruption is up to the amount it would take to finish all the blasts. And once you miss that threshold, once you go over that time limit, you got to start all over and blow all the blasts. And maybe that's what Rav Kahana means, that don't interrupt too long, that you're gonna miss the amount of time that it would take to blow all the blasts. Not like Rabbi Yochanan holds you could spend the whole day, you could interrupt a whole hour and it's no problem and blow one blast every hour. You're no. Maybe Rav Kahana is specifically coming to say that even the rabbis who hold that blowing shofar, each one is an entity, each tekiah and a teruah, they're separate entities. Nevertheless, you can't drag it out. You can't interrupt with an hour in between each. You could interrupt a little, but you can't interrupt a full hour, because the rabbis, even though they hold each one is a separate piece, but it still has to be somewhat of a set. And so maybe Rav Kahana fits with the rabbis. The Gemara says it can't because he says a word over there that v'loy klum. You can't have any interruption at all. So you gotta do it pretty much one after another. And because he says v'loy klum, like no interruption, it sounds like you can't wait kedei ligmar es kula. You can't wait the amount of time that you could finish everything. You got to do one after another, literally. Now so it could only fit with Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda holds they're one entity, so that would make sense. You got to do one after another. But the question really is, even with that said, that Rav Kahana holds you need to do them one after another, not have any interruption. There's two points that have to be added. One is they still have to be two separate blasts. They're not the same. It's not one blast. Do, 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 do. Like you have to have some baby. It would make sense that you should separate the blast one from the other. And the other thing is maybe you should breathe in between, number one, because of a practical reason that just practically it doesn't make sense that you would blow one after another and have a whole set of three without breathing once. No, it would make sense that you would breathe in between each. You can't, you don't interrupt. Okay, it's below klum, no interruption at all, but that doesn't include a breathing interruption. A breathing break is okay. You take a breath, and that would be a practical thing. And then the other point, so there's the breathing concept in there. So the 2 points are, number one, like an interruption for to separate each blast, and number two, a breath, to take a breath in between. And Rashi here says, Loi haya mafsik, the bottom Rashi on page 53b, the bottom Rashi says that you take a Loi haya mafsik bein tayim ella kadei nashim. Now, what does that mean? You can't take any interruption at all, according to Rabbi Yehuda. But kadei nashima, only the amount of time of a breath. That's what Rashi says. So I'm just looking in the back here because from Rashi, it seems to me like he says kedei nashima. He doesn't say you're mafsik and breathe, but he just says kedei nashima. And this is 53b, and guess what? They don't talk about this Rashi. Yeah, they skipped it. But the kadei nashima could mean the amount of time of a breath, but not necessarily are you taking a breath. Meaning you have to separate it with the amount of time of a breath. So again, there's an opinion of the Ritva that you can't take any breath at all. You're not even supposed to take a breath, and that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. You have to this is one entity. You blow them all, and not even take a breath of a separation of a breath, and according to Tosfos, you do have to separate the amount of time that you would take a breath, because each blow has to be separate. Tekiah, teruah, they are separate entities. Now, I mentioned that this applies also according to halacha, according to us. We don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda that the tekiah and the shvarim and the teruah and the tekiah, they're all one entity. We don't hold that. We do hold that a teruah is one entity. And what is a teruah? Teruah, there are three options. A teruah might mean a shvarim, which is a middle-sized blast, 3 middle-sized blasts. It might mean a teruah, which is 9 small blasts, or it might mean a combination of 3 middle-sized and 9 small. Right? It might be a combination of the two. Now, are you supposed to interrupt when you stop in between the three, if you're blowing the combination blow, which is a combination of the 3 middle size blasts in the 9 small blasts, are you allowed to interrupt? Should you interrupt? Could you take a breath in the middle? Should you stop the amount of time that it takes to take a breath? So this is where there's a big discussion. And if I'm not mistaken, the minhag, the common tradition that we do, is that the blows that are done, the first blows, they're called the tekiyos demiyushav, the first blows that are done for the mitzvah, the first 30 blows, we do not take a breath. You stop for a moment, but you don't take a breath. You're not allowed to interrupt with breathing. Why? Because it could be that that's the meaning here, that you're not allowed, that you can't take if it's one entity, you're not allowed to take a breath even. And so for those, we don't take a breath. We stop for a moment, but you don't take a breath. And for the later blows during Musaf, those are called the tekiyos. Those blows, tekiyos dema'uman, those we take a breath in the middle. So there's the 30 blasts that you don't take a breath in the middle, but you stop, and then the 70 blasts that you do take a breath in the middle. And then after you finish davening, there's a minhag to have 30 blasts afterwards, an extra 30, in order to be la'arve v'sasatan. For those, the minhag is not to take an interruption, not to take a breath for those, similar to the first 30. So that's but it's based on this Gemara, would be a source for that discussion. What does Rav Kahana mean that v'loy klum, that you don't take any, you don't interrupt at all, because it's one entity. And we know the trua that we blow is also one entity. It's, of course, one trua. It's a combination of a shvarim and a trua, which is the meaning possibly of what trua is. And if it's one entity, then you can't take a breath in the middle. Or do we say you could take a breath in the middle? They're two separate blasts, even though it's one entity. Anyway, bottom line is that this is something of importance to fulfill the mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah. Okay, now so that was the Gemara, and now we're up to the next piece of Gemara. We're on page 54a, and we're up to Erev Shabbos Shabbosoi Chachag. Erev Shabbos Shabbosei Chachag. We're 4 lines from the top of the page on 54a. 54a, 4 lines from the top of the page. Erev Shabbos Shabbosei Chachag. The Friday that's on Sukkot. So the Mishnah, and I did speak this out yesterday when we learned the Mishnah. When we went through all 48 blows, where do you blow the trumpets for these 48 blows? And we mentioned that our Mishnah does not flow so perfectly if you learn the Mishnah with me on page 51b, because the Mishnah on page 51b mentioned about a 10th, on the 10th step, mentioned about a blow that was done on the 10th step, and we didn't know what that meant. The 10th step, that it meant you walk 10 steps down from the Israelite section to the women's section, and you stop there at the 10th step? Or does it mean that you walk 5 steps and you have 10 steps to go? In other words, do you count 10 steps from the top to the bottom, or 10 steps from the bottom to the top? But whatever it means, you would stop and do a tekiah, teruah, tekiah. Mila, it's called the Mila Asiris, right? If you remember, that was the Mishnah on page 51b. Our Mishnah didn't mention about that blow. Our Mishnah on page 53b doesn't mention about the 10th step. So the Gemara here brings this issue. It says, why doesn't it mention the 10th step? Now, I should mention that the Mishnah talked about the 10th step. It actually symbolizes the letters Yud K, because since there are 15 steps between the Israelite section and the women's section, so if you stop at the 10th step or at the 5th step, you're separating. You have the Yud in the Hey and of Hashem's name, and it's a remez. It's a hint for Hashem's name, that when you would blow this, you would blow the trumpets at that location, at that space of the in between the Israelite section and the women's section. Now, our Gemara here says, Erev Shabbos Shebaseicha Chag, says that this Friday that falls during Sukkot, and it mentions the extra 12 blasts, but it doesn't mention the blast that should have been blasted on the 10th step. And it doesn't mention about the 10th step, surprisingly. So the Gemara says, Masnis and Mani, who does our Mishnah go like that? It doesn't hold of this 10th step, the blowing. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. This follows Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. This follows Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, the Tanya, because it was taught in a brisa. Shalosh Lamaila Asiris. There were 3 blasts, Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah, when you reach the 10th step. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Shalosh al Gabe Hamizbeach. You don't do the 3 at the 10th step. Instead, you do the 3 al Gabe Hamizbeach on the edge, on the side of the altar. And what that referred to, the way we translated it in the Mishnah, meant that you would have the aravais, the willows, hanging over the mizbeach, and you would, at that point, when you would put the willows standing vertically and hanging over the mizbeach, the kohen would blow the 3. They would blow these 3 blasts, Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah. And that was instead of the Mila Asiris. Now, what is the deeper meaning? So you have the Yud K, as I mentioned, the Maharsha brings that idea that it's the 10th step. You have the Yud in the 5 steps that you took or you're going to take. So that gives the Hey. So it's connected to what we would say in the Mishnah. Mentioned that ulaka einenu, our eyes are to Yud K, or to Hashem. So it fits with that idea. In other words, we're mentioning it's all about how we're emphasizing that we're serving you, Hashem. And so this ceremony, which seemed to bring that out, ulaka einenu, that even though our fathers didn't serve you properly, but we are facing you, and we're bowing to you, and to you our eyes are meyachalos, to you our eyes await for. So it's that fits with the concept of the Yud K, because that's the name of Hashem that we're mentioning, that we're saying, and it also connects to the fact that in the second Beis Hamikdash, the Geula was not complete, and the pasuk says that Hashem's name is not complete. It's only Yud K. It's Hashem promises that until we destroy Amalek, his name won't be complete. So when we say Laka Einenu, what we're asking for is that we should have Hashem's name complete, and they would blow the trumpets on the 10th step, because what they're asking for is that we want that we should have Hashem's name should be complete. We should destroy Amalek, and we'll be able to have Hashem's name complete. Now so basically the Gemara mentions here that there's a machlokes. Do you blow the shofar on the 10th, the trumpets on the 10th step, or do you blow the trumpets when they would put the aravos on the side of the mizbeach? That's one pshat. That's one understanding, and that's the way Rashi translated it in the Mishnah. There is another translation that Rashi brings on the side of this Gemara, and he says, "Va'ani shamati," and I heard another pshat. And I'm going to mention it. In fact, let me finish the Gemara with this pshat, and then I'll mention the other pshat. So the Gemara says, "My time of the Rebbe Eliezer." No, I skipped the line. The opinion that says that you blow the three blasts on the 10th step doesn't hold of the blowing the trumpets when you put the aravos on the side of the mizbeach, al gabi mizbeach. Ve'ha'omer al gabi mizbeach, in the opinion of that you put the willows on the side of the mizbeach. Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, he holds you don't do the 10th step, and therefore everyone agrees that you end up with 48. It all equals out. It equals 48 because these opinions don't they each hold their own view, and it ultimately you still stick with the same number, because one says you do it here, the other one says you do it there, but it's not like they add to the other opinion. Then you would have too many. But it's 48 because each one has their view where it's going to be, and this one doesn't hold to that one doesn't hold to this one. The Gemara says, what's the reason? My time of the Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. What's the reason of Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov that he holds that you don't blow on the 10th step? So he says, Kiva de taka lepsichas sharim. Since you blew the trumpets when you opened the gates, and it doesn't mean the first opening of the day. It seems to mean the opening of the Nicanor gate, which is the 7th gate that was opened special for the water drawing ceremony. So there were two really opening of the gates blowings, and it was a drop confusing, because there's the first opening of the gates, and that was a time when they would blow the trumpets on a regular day, and then it says Kara Hagever, they would announce that we're starting the morning sacrifice ceremony, and it says Taku, Rio Taku, that would blow. And that had to do specifically with the water libation ceremony. And that was they would open the Nicanor gate, the Shar HaElyon, and they would blow for the water drawing ceremony. So there was an opening of the gates that happened before. 6 of the 7 gates was opened before this. And that was earlier in the morning, and they would blow the trumpets then. And then later, or shortly thereafter, they would Kara Hagever, they would announce we're doing the morning sacrifice, the morning getting ready for the morning sacrifice, and Kara Hagever, and they would open the Nicanor gate and blow the the Shar HaElyon, and they would open it and they would blow the Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says you blew already for the Psichas Sharim when it reached the Shara Elyon. When you started sending the people out to go draw the water, you blew. To talk al Psichas Sharim, you blew for at that point. Lamaila Asiris Lamali the Taka. Why do you need to blow when you reach the 10th step? You just blew. You just blew at the top of the steps. So you enter, you open the gate on the top of the steps. It's called Shar Nikner, the Nikanor gate. So why are you blowing again? Halav, Hilav Sharhu, and it's not a gate. You didn't reach a new gate. When you reach the next gate, you will actually blow again when you reach a gate, which is going to be called the Shar Hayetzia, or the Shar Hatachtin. When you reach that other gate, you will blow again. But this is not a gate. This is just the 10th step. It's so he says, why do I have to blow in the 10th step? Therefore, al gabe hamizbeach odif. It's better. I'm gonna blow afterwards when we put the aravos on the side of the mizbeach. Then I'm gonna blow the trumpet. Then we blow the trumpets. Rabbanan, what do the rabbis do that hold that you blow on the 10th step? Rabbanan savri kivan detaka lemiloi hamayim. The rabbis say that since the tekiyos are, the purpose is because of the water drawing ceremony, it's for filling the water. Kivan, or I shouldn't say that. Kivan, this is specifically one of the blowings. It's not talking about in general. It's talking about the specific blowing that was done lemiloi hamayim. Since you blew when you fill up the water and then walk into the Beis Hamikdash and you would enter the Shar Hamayim, you would blow the trumpets. So al gabe hamizbeach, no, actually it is the general. Since you're blowing for all of these blows, there's the upper gate, there's the lower gate, there's the filling of the water. As the wording in the Gemara is lemiloi hamayim, but the way Rashi understands it is kivan detaka, that since you're blowing for all of these blasts is because of the water drawing ceremony. Al gabe hamizbeach lamali. Why are you going to blow the trumpets for the arava part? The arava ceremony, that's not a reason to blow the trumpets. The trumpets are being blown special for the water drawing ceremony. So why should you be blowing it when you're putting the willows on the altar? It's better to blow it for the 10th step because that's part of the water drawing ceremony. That would make more sense to blow the trumpets then than to blow it when you're putting the willow ceremony, which has nothing to do with blowing the trumpets. So that's the way, that's the reason of the rabbis that you would blow on the 10th step. It's not a gate, but you blow on the 10th step because it's part of the water drawing ceremony. It makes more sense to blow then than to blow for the willows. That's the answer, that's the explanation of the rabbis. Now, let me tell you the other pshat. Rashi brings an alternative interpretation. What's the alternative? What's the other pshat? So he says, I heard a pshat that 3 are legabe mizbeach, means when you're walking with the water towards bringing it to the mizbeach, you blow the trumpets. Now, keep in mind that you're going to be blowing the trumpets during the water pouring, the water libations. And so you've blown before when you drew the water, when you went down to draw it and so on, and then you brought the water into the Beis Hamikdash. It's called the Miloi Hamayim. And then you're going to walk the water to the altar, you're going to walk the water, bring the water to the altar. And that point, the Mishnah says that you would blow 3 times legabe mizbeach when the water reaches the mizbeach. When you're bringing the water to the mizbeach, so you would bring it there. Now, the Gemara says that Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov says, "Gabe hamizbeach you would blow it. You blow 3 when you bring the water there. The Gemara says, why does the opinion? What's the reason of Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov? So he says, listen, I don't have to blow in the 10th step. I'm blowing for the psichas sharim. I blow at the when we open the gates. I don't need to blow on the 10th step. I just blew before. I'm blowing right after. So it's not a gate, the 10th step. I'm going to blow. Al gabi hamizbeach. Odif. Al gabi hamizbeach. It's better to blow when I bring the water to the mizbeach. That's more connected. That's more, it's like more of a part. This is more of a active part. I'm bringing the water to the mizbeach. I'm going to blow that. And the rabbis say that kivan well, it's a little different wording, but basically the wording is legabe mizbeach lama li detaka hataka le b'shas nisoch hamayim. The wording, according to this girsa, according to this version, is slightly different. It's legabe. Why should I blow when I'm bringing the water onto the altar? I'm going to blow in a moment when during the libation, and I'm going to be blowing in a moment. So therefore, I would blow. Therefore, I would blow. Better to blow on the 10th step. Better to blow on the 10th step. Now, the Mishnah on 45a had said, if you look back on 45a, so the Mishnah over there said, and this is a little problematic. The Mishnah on 45a says that they would do this willow ceremony, taku v'hariu v'taku. They would blow the trumpets. So, if you want to say the first understanding of Rashi, the first understanding of the Gemara, Rashi's understanding of the Gemara, what would you say? Yeah, they blow they blow the trumpets at the willow ceremony. That follows Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov. Okay, that Mishnah seems to follow that they would blow that, right? What about if you learn the second shot of Rashi? If you learn the second shot of Rashi, did you blow at the willow ceremony? There's only 48 blows. And according to Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov, what does it mean, al gabe mizbeach? You know what it means, al gabe mizbeach? When you bring the water to the altar, that's when you blow. So we've got all of our blows in already. And now we look back at page 45. We've got another 3 blows. Oive. This is more than 48. We've got another 3 blows by the willow ceremony. You would be zoikvin oisa b'tzidim mizbeach reshen taku v'ariu v'taku. Now we got 51. We're trying to explain the Gemara here. We have a new pshat in the Gemara that the tzidim mizbeach doesn't mean the willows. And what does it mean? It means when you reach the mizbeach, when you're walking to the mizbeach, you're blowing. Okay, we got all 48. Page 45 says we got another 3 now. So Rashi is bothered with this question, and he says that either you can't learn this pshat because it messes up with the Mishnah about the Arava, or he says maybe when you would bring the water to the Mizbeach, it's the same time that they would do the taku v'hariu v'taku. They would blow, and that one blowing covered both of these blows. It was a taku v'ari of a taku while they did that willow ceremony, which was when they were bringing the water on the altar. It was at the same time. So that's how Rashi answers it, which basically ends up being that it really is both pshatim end up being the same type of you're doing the same blowing at the same time. It's either the
same routine.
It's the same exact moment. It's the Mishnah there mentions which is like the first shot. It had to do with the willow ceremony. The Gemara here that we're in the Mishnah here that we're dealing with is saying that you did it when you were bringing the water to the altar, which is the same exact time as this, and they would blow the 3 blasts. And both Mishnahs mention it that you blew then. Anyway, that's the Gemara here. We're going to stop here. Sei gesund, everyone.
Wait, where are we holding? Where are we holding exactly?
Rabbi.
54a, and we finished.
Okay. I had jumped ahead. Sorry. Thank you.
54a, and we finished this little piece over here of Lamaila Asiris Adif. It's a dot in the Gemara. It must be about 20 lines or 15 lines from the top of the page.
Thank you, Rabbi.
54a. Okay, you're welcome. Mordechai, you wanted to say something? Or?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Okay. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great